$35 trillion in debt, surging by $1 trillion every 100 days, with every taxpayer on the hook for $15,000. Washington's printing money like crazy, Wall Street's gambling recklessly, yet millions of Americans are struggling just to get by. Pension crises, hospitals going bankrupt, schools shuttering, mass exodus. Some states are already on the brink of collapse. The next recession will finish them off. Today, we're exposing America's 10 most vulnerable states and revealing who'll be the first to fall. Number 10. West Virginia, the abandoned coal state. This is a living example of America's long-term economic decline. The coal industry has crashed 75% since 2010, evaporating tens of thousands of high-paying jobs and wiping entire towns off the map. No industry has filled the void, leaving behind only low-wage service jobs and federal handouts. Poverty rate hits 20%, with incomes $15,000 below the national average. But here's what's truly terrifying. Only 54% of working-age people are even looking for jobs. The other 46% have completely given up. This isn't unemployment statistics. This is economic surrender. Opioids have ravaged the entire state, with an overdose death rate of 84 per 100,000, ranked number 1 nationally. This public health disaster devours billions in state funds annually while destroying the workforce and gutting communities. Young people graduate high school and flee to North Carolina, Ohio, or Texas, never looking back. They've lost 100,000 people over a decade, leaving behind the nation's oldest population. 21% over 65. That means more healthcare and pension pressure with fewer taxpayers to support it. 1 in 5 bridges is falling apart. State budget reserves are paper thin. And 35% depends on federal transfers. If Washington tightens the purse strings or the next recession cuts revenue, this state has zero cushion. West Virginia's collapse isn't coming, it's already here. Number 9. Mississippi rock bottom, USA. Nearly every economic ranking puts it dead last. Median income of $48,000, $22,000 below the national average, with millions of families barely scraping by. 20% poverty rate, with some rural counties spiking to 35%, trapping entire regions in generational poverty. Labor force participation at 56%, the nation's lowest. This isn't just a number, it's a desperation signal from tens of thousands who've completely stopped trying. Education consistently ranks last, with underfunded schools and limited higher education opportunities driving talented young people away for good. Infant mortality is the nation's highest. Life expectancy is 5 years shorter than the national average. Rural hospitals keep closing, leaving some communities over an hour from an emergency room. 14% have no insurance. One medical emergency can wipe you out financially. A quarter of bridges are rated inadequate, with roads and water systems facing billions in deferred maintenance. Jackson's repeated water crises are just the tip of the iceberg. The state budget has virtually zero emergency reserves, with 40% of spending dependent on federal money. The combination of poverty, terrible health outcomes, weak education, and a shrinking workforce leaves Mississippi dangerously exposed. When the next economic downturn hits, this state isn't just facing recession, it's facing systematic failure of basic services. Number 8. Michigan, the fragile recovery myth. People say Detroit's back, but the truth is way more complicated. Luxury condos downtown and Ann Arbor's tech corridor can't hide this state's deep fractures. The auto industry has partially recovered, but Michigan still dangerously depends on an industry that could vanish overnight. Manufacturing still accounts for 20% of GDP in 2024, exposing it to global demand collapse risk. 40% of residents face financial distress, overdue bills, medical debt, loan defaults. Median income of $63,000 falls below the national average, with parts of Detroit still seeing poverty rates above 30%. Population loss is a ticking time bomb. Between 2020 and 2024, over 100,000 people left, hollowing out entire towns as families move south and west. This exodus drains tax revenue, leaving behind an aging, lower-income population dependent on already strained public services. 21% of Detroit homes sit vacant, creating wastelands that drag down surrounding property values. Infrastructure is among the nation's worst. 45% of roads are in terrible condition, with annual maintenance needs hitting $7 billion. The water crisis goes way beyond Flint. Some counties still deal with lead contamination as a daily risk, and outdated sewer systems threaten public health with every heavy rain. The opioid epidemic keeps hitting hard, with overdose deaths doubling over a decade. Rural hospitals are closing en masse, turning some areas into medical deserts. When the auto industry sneezes, Michigan gets pneumonia. One drop in car sales can eliminate tens of thousands of jobs, triggering a foreclosure wave like 2008 when Michigan led the nation. Without diversification, this fragile recovery will fall apart. The rust never sleeps, it just spreads. Number 7. Alabama Eroding Foundation. Cultural pride, college football glory, natural beauty, but the economic foundation is rapidly eroding. Median income of $59,000 puts it in the bottom 10, with a 16% poverty rate, meaning nearly 800,000 Alabamians struggle daily just to survive. Education is the biggest weakness and the pillar for future growth. Consistently ranking in the bottom 5, public schools are chronically underfunded, with teacher shortages and low graduation rates. Only 27% of adults hold bachelor's degrees compared to 36% nationally. This education gap destroys the workforce pipeline, forcing educated young people to leave for Georgia or Texas. Healthcare is another crisis. Refusing to expand Medicaid leaves 300,000 residents without affordable coverage. The result? A rural hospital closure wave over 15 since 2010, turning vast areas into medical deserts. Infant mortality is the nation's highest. Life expectancy is 3 years shorter than the national average. Crumbling infrastructure makes the problem worse. Roads and bridges get a D+ rating, with over 16% of bridges structurally deficient. Rural broadband access is spotty, limiting job creation and trapping communities in an underdevelopment loop. The state budget is equally fragile. Alabama's emergency fund is among the weakest in America, exposed to revenue collapse risk. Heavy reliance on aerospace, automotive, and agriculture makes it vulnerable to global trade shocks and economic downturns. When the next recession comes, Alabama isn't just facing economic pressure, it's facing the possibility of total service collapse. Schools closing early, hospitals turning away patients, communities completely abandon the cracks in the foundation will eventually tear it completely apart. Number 6. Arkansas. The quiet bleed. It doesn't make headlines like California or New York, but the crisis is just as deadly, just quieter. Median income of $53,000 ranks among the nation's lowest, with a 15% poverty rate. Rural areas get hit hardest, scarce job opportunities, distant health care, small businesses disappearing one after another. Healthcare access is absolutely terrible. Uninsured rates are among the nation's highest, with over 200,000 residents uncovered. Rural county residents often drive 50 miles to see a doctor. 10 rural hospitals have closed since 2010, leaving thousands helpless in emergencies. Medical debt is the leading cause of bankruptcy in the state. Education outcomes are weak. Fewer than 25% of adults have bachelor's degrees, limiting upward mobility. Rural schools have outdated facilities, underfunded programs, and teacher shortages, making it even harder to improve performance. Without strong education, Arkansas can't build the modern workforce needed to attract high-tech or diversified industries. Economic dependence is another red flag. Walmart headquarters in Bentonville is the state's largest private employer, but Walmart's cutting costs and automating jobs, putting tens of thousands of workers at risk. Agriculture and manufacturing remain economic pillars, but declining profits, overseas outsourcing, and trade volatility make them unreliable. Infrastructure tells a story of neglect, too. Broadband access lags behind, with nearly 40% of rural residents lacking reliable internet. In 2025, that's an economic death sentence. Roads and bridges need billions in upgrades, but the state budget is stretched thin. Nearly 45% of general revenue comes from federal transfers, making Arkansas dangerously dependent on Washington's spending priorities. Arkansas's crisis isn't explosive like a housing crash or Wall Street meltdown. It's a slow bleed. Families leave, hospitals close, jobs vanish, young people never look back. The silence masks the struggle. But when the next recession hits, Arkansas will discover just how fragile its quiet economy really is. Number 5. Kentucky Industry Collapse Textbook. A textbook case of an entire industry collapsing with nothing to replace it. Once defined by coal, this state has watched its pillar industry disintegrate. Coal employment has dropped over 60% since 2010, leaving eastern Kentucky counties with unemployment rates several points above the national average. The result? Generational poverty that refuses to let go. The numbers tell a brutal story. Median income of $57,000 ranks 47th, with nearly 17% poverty rate. Some Appalachian counties spike above 25%, with families surviving on food stamps and disability benefits. Labor force participation is pathetically low. Only 58% of working-age adults are in the labor market, well below the national average. Healthcare is another breaking point. Kentucky has lost 12 rural hospitals since 2010, leaving remote mountain residents over an hour from the nearest emergency care. Life expectancy is 4 years shorter than the national average, with the opioid epidemic hitting Kentucky especially hard. Overdose death rates rank among the nation's highest at over 2,100 annually, draining families and state resources. Education can't provide a lifeline. Only 27% of adults hold bachelor's degrees or higher, with underfunded rural schools struggling with low graduation rates and outdated facilities. This drives young people away, creating a vicious cycle talent leaves. Desperation deepens. Kentucky's economy overdepends on declining industries, like coal and tobacco, while struggling to attract new investment. Infrastructure needs pile up. Nearly 1 in 10 bridges is structurally deficient. Rural broadband is spotty. When the next recession hits, Kentucky isn't just facing higher unemployment, it's facing the risk of entire regions being completely economically abandoned. Forgotten in the mountains, this state is already teetering between survival and collapse. Number 4. Nevada, the state built on a bet. The Las Vegas neon lights are dazzling, but beneath the surface, the economy is just one big gamble. Nearly 30% of the workforce directly depends on tourism, hospitality, and gaming, the most unstable industries when the economy tanks. When tourists stop coming, Nevada doesn't just slow down, it collapses. The unemployment roller coaster proves everything. Nevada consistently ranks as one of America's most unstable job markets, with unemployment spiking from 3.6% to 4.2% in a single year. During the Great Recession, it surged past 13%, the nation's highest, with thousands of workers never recovering. The housing market reflects the same volatility. Nevada was ground zero when things crashed in 2008, with foreclosure rates second in the nation. Prices have rebounded aggressively since, surging over 40% since 2020, but affordability has collapsed. Las Vegas median home price now exceeds $450,000, while median household income hovers at $72,000, stretching families to the limit. Another downturn could easily trigger a new foreclosure wave. Beyond Las Vegas and Reno, the picture gets darker. Rural counties suffer from shrinking populations, limited health care, and economies dependent on fragile service industries. Infrastructure is severely strained. 20% of bridges get structural deficiency ratings, and water scarcity is an existential threat, with the Colorado River Reservoir system hitting historic lows. The state budget is equally fragile. Nevada has no state income tax, relying heavily on sales tax, tourism tax, and gaming revenue. These sources are highly cyclical. When visitor numbers drop down 30% during the pandemic, budgets get slashed, forcing service cuts. Nevada's economy is essentially a casino bet. It looks great when the chips are stacked high, but when the cards go wrong, it's devastating. When the next economic storm arrives, Nevada isn't just vulnerable, it's ready to collapse. This house of cards built on tourism will fall again. Number 3. Louisiana, the perfect storm. Fighting on multiple fronts, and the numbers reveal how bad things are. Poverty runs deep, with nearly 19% of residents living below the poverty line. Nearly 900,000 people, one of the nation's highest. Median income of $56,000 puts it near the national bottom. The economy heavily depends on the volatile oil and gas market, creating dangerous boom-bust cycles. When energy prices drop, the whole state feels the aftershocks. Dependence on a single sector makes it vulnerable to global price swings and renewable energy policy shifts. Diversification is slow, with losses showing up in empty warehouses, shuttered factories, and dying towns. Natural disasters make every problem worse. Hurricane Ida in 2021 caused over $75 billion in damage, destroying infrastructure, homes, and businesses. Louisiana has virtually no financial reserves for quick recovery. Every hurricane season represents an economic threat that can wipe out years of progress. Infrastructure is crumbling at an alarming rate. The Civil Engineers Association gives it a D+ rating, with over 1,500 bridges classified as structurally deficient. Roads, levees, and water systems desperately need billions in upgrades the state can't afford. Baton Rouge and New Orleans face ongoing flood risks, with coastal erosion swallowing a football field's worth of land every 100 minutes. Louisiana also suffers stunning brain drain. Over 70% of LSU graduates leave within 5 years, taking their skills and tax dollars with them. Population is stagnant, with many rural parishes in free fall. Healthcare adds more burden, with high uninsured rates and hospitals under pressure. Access is especially limited outside major cities. Louisiana isn't just fiscally fragile, it's literally sinking, both literally and figuratively. The perfect storm of poverty, weak infrastructure, oil dependence, and repeated natural disasters puts this state on a collision course with collapse. Number 2. Hawaii paradise you can't afford. From the outside, it looks like paradise turquoise waters, luxury resorts, postcard sunsets. But for residents, it's becoming economically unlivable. Median home prices have exploded past $850,000, while median household income sits at just $88,000. That means the average family would need to save every penny for nearly 10 years just to afford a standard down payment. For many locals, homeownership is simply impossible. Cost of living is the highest in America. A gallon of milk often exceeds $6. Regular gas routinely tops $5 per gallon. Food, utilities, and household goods cost nearly double the mainland because virtually everything must be imported. These costs crush families already struggling to cover basic needs. Hawaii's economy dangerously tilts toward tourism, providing nearly 30% of state GDP. The pandemic exposed the vulnerability. Visitor arrivals dropped over 70% in 2020, and by 2024 were still 15% below pre-pandemic levels. This left tens of thousands unemployed and state revenues slashed. Any future shock, whether global recession, natural disaster, or geopolitical crisis, could devastate the island's lifeline industry again. The Great Exodus is already underway. Native Hawaiians are leaving in record numbers, squeezed out by soaring housing costs, vacation rental conversions, and wealthy investors buying up property. Between 2010 and 2024, Hawaii lost tens of thousands of long-term residents, while gaining transient populations like retirees and foreign investors who can afford the inflated costs. Healthcare and infrastructure are equally fragile. The islands face doctor shortages, with rural areas often lacking adequate medical facilities. Import dependence means supply chain disruptions immediately translate to empty shelves. Energy prices remain the nation's highest, and Hawaii imports nearly 80% of its food, creating extreme vulnerability during global crises. Hawaii may be paradise for the wealthy, but for ordinary residents, it's a financial nightmare. When the next economic storm hits, this fragile island economy could sink faster than any mainland state. Proof that even paradise can collapse. Number 1. Illinois, the pension time bomb. Chicago's gleaming skyscrapers, world-class universities, proud industrial history, but beneath the surface lurks one of America's most dangerous fiscal crises, the pension time bomb. The retirement system is underfunded by a staggering $139 billion a hole, so massive it equals $11,000 for every resident, including babies. This is the nation's deepest pension hole, and it's getting wider every year. Credit agencies have noticed. Illinois is the only state with credit ratings hovering just above junk status, making borrowing costs higher than almost anywhere. Every economic downturn forces the state to issue more debt, driving up interest payments while basic services like schools and healthcare get underfunded. Taxes tell the next part of the story. Illinois has the nation's highest property taxes, with some homeowners paying 2.2% of their home's value annually just in property tax. A modest $300,000 home means over $6,600 per year, crushing families and driving residents to flee. Just in 2024, Illinois lost over 83,000 residents, one of the biggest population declines of any state. Those leaving are usually high earners, further eroding the tax base and worsening the downward spiral. The state economy is large, but increasingly unequal. Downtown Chicago's fintech boom, while the rest of Illinois struggles with declining manufacturing, shrinking small towns, and underfunded school districts. Median income of $75,000 is close to the national average. But climbing, cost of living, and relentless taxes make it feel much lower for middle-class families. Infrastructure needs billions in repairs. Nearly 2,400 bridges are structurally deficient, with deferred maintenance growing each year as funds get diverted to cover pensions and debt service. Social services are stretched to the limit, with long wait times for healthcare and education programs.